Citizens of the world, welcome back to another Keep Yours podcast, where we try and keep a few extra dollars in your wallet so you can spend it on the stuff you like to. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about our options as society. And the article that I'm going to refer you to was recently in the Wall Street Journal, referring to Argentina running low on dollars, faces fresh economic turmoil. And by turmoil, they mean really, really, really bad things. And you could look at this as a separate, isolated incident, but if you read into the history of Argentina and what's happened there recently over the last couple decades, is what I'm referring to, you will find that they've basically gone down the path of socialism. And the Peronist movement there that has become in charge has made government in charge of all central planning and decision making. And this is exactly why they have the problems they have. Because turns out people in government are really, really bad at running businesses and figuring out how to get things done. And so when they decide where resources will be allocated to, bad things happen. And they also really like to print money. Now, I know we've got problems in this country. But when I hear that 50 to 60% of young people think socialism is a good idea, I think that's because they actually haven't seen it in real life. And they don't understand the consequences of what's going to happen if we go down this path. And specifically, we look at other countries and we go, okay, where is the socialist program that we really like, that we want to emulate? And everyone keeps pointing to the Nordic countries. But if you go ask somebody from Sweden or Finland that, hey, why does your socialism work so well? They will look at you cross-eyed. They will look at you like you're crazy. They say, we do not have socialism here. We have some social programs, but for the most part, they are way more free market than the U.S. is right now. And that's why I've kind of crossed out capitalism, because we like to say capitalism's the problem and it's all the capitalists. Now, we do have some problem with greed, but the real problem that I see is we've let government become way too much in charge of way too many things. They've taken way too many liberties, and the amount of influence that rich people and big companies have in our government has made it so it's not a free market. We don't have free markets anymore. They hardly exist. We've allowed consolidation to happen over and over, where every time you look around, you've got like three choices. Right? Look at who you're going to get a phone plan with. Right? Verizon, AT&T, and now the Sprint T-Mobile combo. And then you have some other options below that, but guess what? Those are pretty much owned by those three. Right? You want to go rent a car. You've got Hertz, Avis, and Enterprise. And then you got a bunch of other names, pretty much almost all owned by one of those three. Right? You want to go buy groceries. You're going to Walmart, Costco, Safeway, Albertsons, a little bit, or Kroger. Right? So maybe we've got 5 or 6 with grocery stores in a couple little small markets. You want to go get stuff for your house. You're left with Walmart, Target, and the dollar store. And a lot of people end up buying food from these dollar stores, which is horrible. So we're not getting into that too much today, but what I do want to talk about is Argentina as the example. And they are one of many. You could look at Cuba. You could look at Venezuela. More and more, you're seeing these autocratic regimes where they say we have free markets, they say they have democracy, but what they really have is central planning and socialism. And the government becomes in charge of determining where things flow, who gets assets, who doesn't, who gets opportunities, who doesn't. And this results in horrible, horrible, horrible things. And make no mistake, we're looking at that in the U.S. right now. If you want to see this in real world in the U.S., California is your perfect example. California has the highest taxes. So they collect the most money. Right? And now what are they saying? Well, we still don't have enough. We need more and more and more. Until they're going to get to all of it, and then they're still not going to solve the problems, and then what are they going to do? We don't know. But if you look at the problems they have, they're a lot bigger because the government's assumed all of these responsibilities. So in addition to the highest taxes, California has the highest homeless. They also tend to have the highest incarceration rates because when socialists get into power, they get to decide what's legal and not legal. And they tend to criminalize all the behavior they don't like, making criminals out of all their enemies. No one's allowed to speak up against it. If you do, we just put you in jail, which sounds a lot like Russia, right? And we'll get to communism on a later date. That's another podcast where we'll talk about what they're doing in China. But to show you what's happened in Argentina when the socialists take over, and make no mistake, this inflation graph here could very well be the United States in the next 20 years. We could very well see this. But they take over, and what do? They start printing money. So in 2002, you got 30% inflation. 30% in 1 year. That's massive. There's not a year in the last 20 that they're under 10% inflation. So every year, and look at this year, we're talking 50% inflation. So we're talking the amount of things that you could buy with your money a year ago is now half this year. Oh yeah, and by the way, the year before that it was 40%, and the year before that it was 30%, and the year before that it was 40%. So if you went 5 years without a raise, well, guess what? You've lost like 99% of your buying power. Okay, so that causes all sorts of problems. And the government basically can't stop spending because what the government does is they print money to give it to the people that they like. And they just keep printing more of it and more of it and more of it. So the people they like get money. Everybody else goes broke. And this is what's happening in the country. You go, okay, what happens after that? Right? Oh, so what happens after that is they start having to put in all of these things that cause massive problems. So they put on taxes on transactions. So instead of thinking like here, we're going to talk about the tax on dollar purchases, but just think about dollars in Argentina, because the local currency is pesos. So dollars in Argentina is more like gold. In relationship to, if you're a U.S. citizen, it's hard to relate. What does that mean? Because I have dollars, so they're dollars. Well, so instead of saying, hey, think of dollars as dollars, think of dollars to Argentinians as gold would be to someone in the U.S. So they're saying, hey, if you want to do business in gold, we're going to tax that 35%. We're also going to limit the amount you can get. So you can only get $200 in cash. Meanwhile, you have 50% inflation. So even if you got more cash, it's not worth anything. And they're just limiting the dollars because that's like limiting the gold in the US. So then the other thing that they've done is they've frozen prices, right? Which means that if you're a company who's offering services, even though they're printing money, so you have to buy your goods, and those goods have gone up 50% in raw material costs. Right? But you can't pass that along to your customers, so you're forced to operate at a loss. That's going to create shortages because businesses can't continue to operate that way, and more businesses go bankrupt. And then they steal money in other ways. So they have an official exchange rate. So then they're also going to tax exports. So imagine if in the US you wanted other currency, and let's say you wanted gold. So you said, okay, I'm going to make things and I'm going to export them to Mexico, and I'm going to have them pay me in gold or pesos, right? Well, the government says we're going to tax that, and then, we're going to take those and turn them into an official exchange rate, which is half of the value. So the official exchange rate in Argentina. So if you fly into Argentina right now, this is a perfect example. If you fly into Argentina right now and you put your debit card in an ATM machine and ask to get pesos, you're going to get an exchange rate of 80 pesos for every dollar. Okay? But if you take that same cash out onto the street to buy things with, it will buy you twice as much goods and services. So the government is stealing everybody's money at a rate of 50% just on the official exchange rate. And so what happens? Well, if the government's taking all your money on the official exchange rate, then you can't do business. And literally, this leads to starvation. Let me explain to you how. It's very, very simple. If you're in Argentina right now, there's not enough tire factories for all of the tires needed. Well, you need tires for your farming equipment to get the crops out of the ground so you can plant them and harvest them and do all of the things you do with tractors. Well, if those tires have to come from America or another country and you can't get dollars and the prices keep going up, you're trying to do it in pesos, no one will take your pesos. So then you say, hey, we'll have to convert my pesos to dollars. And the government only gives you 80 pesos for they only give you $1 for the 160 pesos you give them, right? Meanwhile, the real value is half of that. Then you can't afford to buy the tires that you need. And literally there's just a shortage of dollars because the government's in charge of everything. And this is the problem. This is the difference between socialism and freedom. No one in Argentina right now has freedom to conduct transactions as they would like. I'm not talking about taxing super wealthy people. That needs to happen. What I'm talking about is the reduction of liberty, the inability for people to control their own destiny, the inability for people to conduct their own business absent the government, because now you need the government's permission. The government has to allow you to get dollars. The government has to allow you a certain exchange rate. The government can take from you whenever they want. They can freeze the price at which you can charge on transactions. We've got a little bit of this right now with rent control. Okay, what happens if all of a sudden everyone who didn't pay rent just never pays rent again? The landlords can't keep paying rent if they don't collect rent. They can't pay their mortgages if they don't collect rent from the people staying there. So what if the price to provide services keeps going up? The cost to, let's say, run a restaurant and buy food. So food prices went up 50%, but the restaurant has to charge the same price. How long can that restaurant stay in business? How many meals is that restaurant owner going to make where it's losing money? You just stop doing it, right? And then, just like in California, people start voting with their feet and they start leaving. And in economics, this is called bad money chases out the good money. And what that means is people will leave the country. And if you think this isn't happening in Argentina, you are wrong. And not only that, there are other countries that are specifically courting the rich people to leave. And make no mistake, the rich people don't have all their money in pesos because they've got advisors that have advised them this is not a good idea. So they have their money in dollars and gold and other things that they can move. And it's not all in a bank in Argentina, so the government can come in and control it. So where are they going? Uruguay. Uruguay is literally courting people and saying, hey, come on over, especially rich retirees who just come and spend money. Countries love that. And that's happening in California right now. Joe Rogan, $100 million contract. Austin, Texas. He's out. Elon Musk, selling all my property because, I really want to focus on building cars. And, oh yeah, by the way, I also don't want to be a California citizen anymore because of the taxes. So he's out. Ben Shapiro got a huge network of people that he's built. Some of his stuff's a little crazy, but he makes a lot of money. Was living in California, now leaving. I think maybe Tennessee or somewhere else. Just listened to another guy the other day, very successful young man from California, went to UCLA. He just went to Puerto Rico, where there's actually no federal tax. So people are voting with their feet, and California is going to lose not just the revenue from those people, but the jobs that they create. They're also going to lose, it's called brain drain, when all the smart people decide that they're out of there and they're going to leave, right? And what are you left with in California? Overcrowded prisons because they criminalize everything. A homeless population that's almost unconscionable, especially considering how much money they collect there. And government trying to be in control of more and more and more things. If America is going to turn this boat around, right now, everyone wants government to be in control of more things. And that's the opposite of what we need. What we need is the government control of less things. The less the government is controlling from us, the better we're going to be. The less the government is in our business, the better our lives are. That's what liberty and freedom is about. That's what the Constitution says. The Constitution limited the powers of government. Now, a bureaucracy, once it's created, its inherent design is to make sure that it exists and grow itself. It's never designed to shrink itself. How many presidents that we know of have shrunk the U.S. government? None. That's what you need to know. We need less government, but not more of it. Government's job is not to make sure that we are treated well as children, make sure we have a great education, pay for our college, make sure we have a job, pay for our retirement. That's not their job. That is not going to work. We're going to find out that that is an illusion. And unfortunately, we've made all these grand promises, and most of them won't happen. The promises we've made are almost like a pyramid scheme, where if you got out early, you're just the one on the top. So if you're retired early, if you live in Illinois, your pension's probably not going to be trimmed too much. Or by the time it is trimmed, you're older, maybe even dead. But for those coming later, Social Security is the same thing. So for those who have gotten Social Security for the last 20, 30 years, congratulations. For those starting to get it now, the amount of Social Security you're going to get is probably going to stay about the same. The value of those dollars is going to go less. We allowed our federal government to run a $3 trillion deficit last year. There is no controls over the government in terms of what they can do. Most state and local governments, they have to balance the budget, which is the second wave of this economic crisis we're about to see. If you didn't read what's going on in New York right now, they are billions, tens of billions short of money because of not collecting taxes, because they shut down their economies and people stop buying things, and they're going to be a whole lot less collected in property taxes, and people aren't making any money. So you only pay taxes when you make money. And that is not to say that at different points government should not step in and help people when we have crises. But just like a person's finances, you're going to have crises in your life. You have to have a savings account for that. But instead, we spent the savings account a long time ago. And now that we need it, it's not available because we spent it already. So if you already spent your savings and then you have a problem, guess what? You don't have any money to deal with it. So our government's out on credit. And right now that's working. We've seen the largest deficits ever when it comes to our trade imbalances. That means we are buying more things from other countries without the money to pay for them. We just keep issuing paper and they keep taking it. What happens when they decide they're not going to send us anything else? Just like Argentina can't import goods anymore because they don't have the money to buy them. And no one will give them any more credit because they've defaulted so many times. What happens then? Are we going to see price controls? That's the concern here. The concern here is that they're going to come confiscate the gold. Now, they're not going to come door to door and do that. But for all of us invested in a GLD or similar type fund, they're going to come take that. And any other gold assets that they can get their hands on, they'll just take those and they'll say the official exchange rate, might be $2,000 to the ounce. Meanwhile, on the street, it's worth double. In the rest of the world, it's worth double. And people will leave. The rich people will flee, take on all their assets, and not just their assets, but their businesses and their intelligence with them. And that is really, really bad for the long term. And then the government will come in with all of these controls on what you can't do. They'll list price controls, right? We already see this in certain places with real estate, where I believe might have been the whole state of Oregon, or at least Portland, put on price controls for all rent. Okay, well, what's that mean? That landlords can't collect enough money. which means there's going to be less places for rent. You don't get more of something when you control it. You're going to get less of it. And in Argentina, that means less food. The same thing is happening in Cuba right now, where the farmers literally, they take so much of what they grow, they're like, well, why would we even bother growing food anymore? And there's shortages. And this is what socialism leads to, because the grand design of socialism, the part that everyone's attracted to, and I love it too, is that we're going to end up with these great, great leaders who are going to never do anything in their own personal interest and only make decisions that's best for everyone. But all you need is one bad leader. And we already got one of those in 45. He's terrible. So imagine if he had control over everything, because that's what he wants. He loves the guys who have complete control. He thinks Putin is great. He thinks Kim Jong-un is wonderful. He wishes he had the power of a Xi. He loves those authoritarians. That's the way he ran his business. I don't like you, you're fired. So the government gets to be in charge of all those decisions? That's frightening for all of us. So if you think socialism is the right path forward, I want you to think about that. I want you to question that. I want you to look at the other countries as the example. Argentina, right here in front of you, go take a look. See what's happened with their inflation. See what's happening with their economy. See what's happening with the people on the ground. It's not good. And I hope that doesn't happen here. But based off of how we're voting and the sentiment of young people because they think government's going to be able to save them, they won't save us. They'll screw us. Most of us. Now, if you're in with them, just like if you're around Washington, D.C. right now, where most of the richest counties in the country are just around the Capitol. So you got everybody sucking off this huge government tit of money that's collected from all of us. It's our money. And we're allowing them to be in control of it. We're allowing them to print money. We're allowing the Federal Reserve to run out of control and do whatever they want without free markets. And the part that the government's supposed to do, they're not doing. They're not controlling markets. Instead, they let these high-speed traders screw us all out of money. They let these big banks consolidate and screw us out of money. Every other day, you see one of these big banks settling up for hundreds of millions or billions of dollars because they've screwed people. Did the people get their money back? No. Just like in the housing crisis, right? Who banks got bailed out? Did people get bailed out? No. And just like now, businesses are going under, and the government's soon to be in charge to decide the winners and losers in all of this. That's not going to lead to a prosperity for anyone. That is going to lead to a road to ruin, and that is not good for America. So please, go take a look around the world. And if I'm wrong, and you've got examples of other countries where socialism works great and that's a real program and they've implemented it, please bring that to me. I would love to find another system. And make no mistake, the capitalism we have now is not real capitalism. As I've said, this is crony capitalism, has been for a long time, right? I believe in free markets, but we don't have those. So please, don't vote socialist. Don't think that that's a good idea. It sounds great. The theory of it is 100% sound. There's one major problem with it. People. And we can't trust that our leaders will end up making the best decision for us while not making the best decision for them. As we can see over and over and over and over, they make the best decision for themselves. Thanks for listening. Hope this is informative and educational. We got a lot of new things coming. I've got a deal with one of my best friends. He's going to come on and help talk about money and also do some really deep dives into personal finance. And I look forward to all of that. So stay tuned. Share this with your friends and family. Please like us on Facebook and give us good reviews on whatever platform you're listening to this on, especially YouTube. And if you have questions or comments, please send them to us. And have a good day. And hope we don't end up as a socialist country. All right. Cheers.